The year is 3057. Humanity has expanded far beyond the confines of Earth, colonizing distant planets and establishing thriving civilizations across the stars. In the far reaches of space, a mysterious race known as the Centauri have emerged, appearing seemingly out of nowhere. They are highly advanced, their technology light years ahead of human capabilities, and their motives unclear. To the rest of the galaxy, the Centauri have a reputation as enforcers of peace and balance. Their guiding philosophy is embedded in a simple, yet profound statement that echoes across their interstellar society. We don't kill humans. This code, as old as the Centauri themselves, forms the foundation of their interactions with humanity. But there are whispers among the human colonies, rumors of mysterious disappearances, strange occurrences, and a growing unease. The Centauri are not the peaceful guardians they claim to be. And some believe the oath is no longer just a philosophy, it's a promise waiting to be broken. Chapter 1: The First Encounter. Commander Elise Walker stood at the observation deck of the Arcship Produce, staring out into the endless void of space. The stars sparkled like diamonds against the inky backdrop, but something gnawed at her, a persistent unease that had taken root over the past few weeks. The Centauri had appeared in the system only days ago, broadcasting their signature transmission, the words of the oath, always accompanied by a peaceful gesture. Yet, despite their calm demeanor, Commander Walker had never been one to trust anything she couldn't fully understand. Her mind raced with memories of humanity's darker history. For every peaceful encounter, there had been 10 others where things had turned sour. And while the Centauri's technology was dazzling, ships that could fold space and bend time, it was still unknown whether their intentions were truly as benevolent as they claimed. "Captain," a voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Dara, the communications officer. "The Centauri vessel has made contact again. They're requesting a face-to-face meeting." Elise nodded slowly, turning toward the crew. "Prepare the diplomacy team. I want all hands on deck for this." Chapter 2: A Meeting of Minds. The Centauri ship, Eterus, was unlike any human vessel. Its sleek, almost organic shape glowed softly with bioluminescent patterns, pulsing with life. The crew had been instructed to prepare for a peaceful encounter, but that didn't ease the sense of tension that permeated the room. Elise stood in the command center of the Proteus, waiting for the holographic projection of the Centauri ambassador to appear. The crew watched anxiously as the air seemed to ripple, and then the figure of an alien materialized before them. It was humanoid in shape, with translucent skin that shimmered in the low light, revealing an intricate network of veins glowing faintly beneath. The ambassador's eyes were deep pools of black, filled with a quiet wisdom that seemed to stretch across centuries. "I am Eshva," the Centauri's voice reverberated through the room, calm and melodious. "I speak for the Centauri Council. We come in peace, as we always have." Commander Walker took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Eshva, I welcome you. Humanity seeks only peace as well. But there are concerns. Your code, your oath. It promises that you do not kill humans. But what does that mean, exactly? What happens when we are no longer the only species you encounter?" Eshva's gaze shifted, and for the briefest moment, Walker thought she saw something flicker in the ambassador's eyes, something that wasn't entirely peaceful. "Our oath is not merely a promise," Eshva said, "it is a philosophy rooted in the balance of the universe. The protection of all life is paramount. But peace is fragile. It must be carefully maintained. There are those among us who may seek to alter that balance. Should the need arise, we will intervene, but always with the utmost care. Always with the oath." The ambassador's words were soothing, but there was an underlying weight to them that made Walker uneasy. "Is there a threat we should be concerned about?" Walker pressed. Eshva paused for a long moment before responding. "There is always a threat. But rest assured, Commander, we will not break our oath." Chapter 3: The Hidden Truth. Weeks passed, and the Proteus continued its journey, now in the company of the Centauri. The two species engaged in diplomatic talks, sharing knowledge and technology. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, but Walker couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Late one evening, while reviewing reports in her quarters, Walker received an encrypted message, a distress signal. It was a simple transmission, but the location was alarming, a research station deep within a remote sector of the galaxy. The station had been working on a top-secret project involving the Centauri, and the signal seemed to be coming from a human crew member. "Commander," said Lieutenant Dara as she entered the room. "There's been a breach. A Centauri ship is en route to the station, and it's not responding to any hails." Walker's heart raced. "Prepare the team. We're going to investigate." Chapter 4: The Truth Behind the Oath. The journey to the station was tense. The Proteus was well equipped for deep space exploration, but the isolation of the sector left them vulnerable to ambushes or interference from hostile forces. They arrived to find the station in chaos. Systems were down, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal. Inside the station, the crew found the source of the distress signal. Dr. Hannah Kerrigan, a leading scientist on the project, was trapped in the control room. She looked disheveled, her face pale, but her eyes were wide with panic. "They're not who they claim to be," she whispered frantically, as soon as she saw the commander. "The Centauri. They've been experimenting on us. We're not just collaborating with them, we've been the subjects of their tests." Before Walker could respond, the lights flickered, and the station's emergency alarms went off. The Centauri had arrived. Chapter 5: Betrayal and Revelation. The Centauri ambassador, Eshva, stepped onto the station with an entourage of armed guards. There was no mistaking the cold, calculating aura that surrounded them. The serene demeanor from their earlier meetings had vanished. "You shouldn't have come here, Commander." Eshva's voice was quiet, almost regretful. "The oath was never meant to protect humans from themselves. It was meant to protect the galaxy from what humanity might become." Elise felt her blood run cold. "What are you saying?" The Centauri ambassador raised a hand, signaling for the guards to stand down. "We have observed humanity for centuries. Your species is capable of great destruction, far beyond anything the galaxy has seen. The oath was our way of ensuring that you would never fall into chaos. But your attempts to use Centauri technology for war, this is a dangerous path." Dr. Kerrigan's voice broke in, trembling with fear. "They've been altering our DNA. Experimenting with human evolution, merging us with their own technology to create something more. We are not just peaceful collaborators, we are their subjects." Chapter 6: The Choice. As the truth unraveled, Elise was faced with a choice. Would she trust the Centauri's wisdom and allow them to control humanity's destiny, or would she fight to maintain humanity's autonomy, regardless of the risks? In the final showdown, Commander Walker would face the hardest decision of her life. She had seen the darker side of the Centauri's intervention and would not be swayed by their promises of peace. The future of both species hung in the balance as they faced the true meaning of the oath. Chapter 11: The Price of Victory. The station shuddered as the broadcast continued, sending shockwaves across every human colony. The truth of the Centauri's manipulation of humanity would no longer be hidden. Across the stars, humans would now understand the full extent of their interference, their efforts to bend humanity's will for their own purposes. But as Elise and her team made their way back to the Proteus, the cost of their victory became evident. The Centauri weren't just going to let this go. The Proteus's sensors blared an alarm. A fleet of Centauri ships had arrived, and they were not here for negotiations. "We need to go," Walker said. "Now." The crew scrambled to their stations as the Centauri ships loomed on the horizon, their firepower overwhelming. The Proteus had no choice but to make a run for it, fleeing through hyperspace just as the first blast from the Centauri fleet ripped through the station behind them. As they escaped into the vast expanse of space, Elise felt a mix of relief and dread. The galaxy had learned the truth, but now humanity's real test would begin. The Centauri were a force to be reckoned with, and this was just the beginning of the fight for humanity's freedom. Chapter 12, The Aftermath. The Proteus drifted through hyperspace, with its crew exhausted but resolute. Elise stood on the bridge, staring out into the stars. The galaxy had changed overnight. The Centauri's hold over humanity was broken, but the price of freedom was high. "We've done it," Lieutenant Dara said, her voice quiet but filled with relief. "We've exposed them." "For now," Walker replied, turning toward her. "But the real battle is just beginning." Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, no longer under the shadow of the Centauri. They were free, but the path ahead was uncertain. Would they rise to the occasion, or would they fall into chaos without the guiding hand of the Centauri to control them? One thing was certain: humanity would fight for their future. And for the first time, it was a future they would shape on their own terms. Certainly. Let's continue the story, taking it into the aftermath of the battle and exploring the ramifications of humanity's newfound autonomy, as well as the consequences of their actions. Chapter 13, The Tides of Change. The Proteus drifted through hyperspace, its engines humming quietly in the background as Commander Walker stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the expanse of stars ahead. There was a weight in her chest, a mix of relief and trepidation. The Centauri were no longer a direct threat, at least, not in the way they once were, but the galaxy was changing, and humanity had no idea what that future would look like. "We've exposed the truth, but that doesn't mean we're safe," Lieutenant Dara said, her voice cutting through Walker's thoughts. "The Centauri might have pulled back, but they won't forget what we've done." Elise nodded, her expression grim. "They can't afford to. Their peacekeeping facade is shattered. And if what Dr. Kerrigan said is true, that humanity's genetic alterations are widespread, then we're no longer just a small piece in the Centauri's chessboard. We're a threat." Dara sat back in her chair, tapping a few buttons on the console. "A threat to what? Their control? Their vision of the universe?" "Exactly," Walker replied. "But that's the problem. We've made them an enemy. And we've shown the galaxy that we're not afraid to fight back. But now, we have to figure out what comes next." Chapter 14, The Repercussions. It didn't take long for the news of humanity's rebellion to spread across the galaxy. The broadcast that had revealed the Centauri's manipulation of human genetics and their secret experiments quickly became a viral sensation. Throughout the colonies, on distant planets and in crowded spaceports, humans began to rally around the message: humanity had been deceived, controlled, and now they were free. But not everyone saw it as a victory. The Centauri were not passive in their defeat. Instead of attacking outright, they began a quiet campaign of destabilization. Centauri-aligned factions within the human colonies began to push back, stirring dissent and unrest. The Centauri had long infiltrated human governments, businesses, and military installations. With their oath shattered, the Centauri's allies within human space now found themselves emboldened, attempting to reclaim the influence they once held. Elise knew this battle was far from over. Humanity had won a significant victory, but the war for its independence had only just begun. The galaxy was watching, and the Centauri were not going to let humanity slip through their fingers without a fight. Chapter 15, The New Threat. A few weeks after the broadcast, the Proteus docked at a small human-controlled station near the edge of the outer colonies. The crew had been given a brief respite, but there was no time to relax. Intelligence reports were flooding in, many of them about a new alliance forming between various factions sympathetic to the Centauri cause. "We can't ignore this," Lieutenant Dara said, flipping through a series of encrypted reports. "The Centauri might not have the strength to crush us outright, but they've found other ways to control us. Their allies on the fringe are growing stronger. They're mobilizing for something big." Elise leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Dara paused, bringing up an image on the main screen. It was a fleet human ships, heavily modified with Centauri tech. The designs were sleek, almost unrecognizable from their original form. These ships were built for war. "That's not just an alliance," Walker said, her voice low. "That's an army." We believe they're trying to form a new coalition, one that will challenge our independence and possibly even ally directly with the Centauri, Dara explained. If we don't stop them, we risk losing the colonies we've gained. Elise clenched her fists. We can't let them have the upper hand. We've come too far. It's time to take the fight to them. Chapter 16, The Fringe War. Elise and her team began to assemble a new strategy. They would take the fight to the growing threat on the fringe, infiltrating the factions sympathetic to the Centauri and dismantling their operations. But this would be a different kind of battle. The enemy was not just the Centauri themselves, it was humanity, fractured and divided. Their war was now against their own species. We'll need more than just our crew for this, Elise said. We'll have to build alliances with the independent colonies. We need every hand we can get. With the Produce as their flagship, the crew began traveling between the various human colonies, seeking out leaders who might be willing to oppose the Centauri-aligned factions. But the challenges were many. Old grudges, economic ties, and the promise of Centauri protection kept many colonies neutral, if not outright loyal to the Centauri. One particular system, the colony of Kaltora, was teetering on the edge of allegiance to the Centauri factions. Kaltora's leadership had always been divided, and they now found themselves courted by both sides. Elise knew they had to act quickly. If Kaltora fell, it would embolden the Centauri-aligned factions, and the tide would turn against them. Chapter 17, A Shift in the Tide. The crew of the Produce arrived at Kaltora under the cover of darkness, knowing the stakes had never been higher. The colony's capital city lay on the edge of a vast desert, and its politics were as hotly contested as the sun that baked the landscape. Elise and her team met with Kaltora's leaders, hoping to sway them to their cause. But the meeting did not go as planned. The leader of Kaltora, Governor Amonrel, was a pragmatist. He saw the potential for both sides. Centauri control offered stability and protection, while independence offered the chance for freedom, but at great risk. Your message is clear, Commander, Governor Rel said, his voice steady. But so is the reality of the galaxy. The Centauri offer peace. You offer war. How do you expect us to choose? Elise held his gaze. We don't want war. We want freedom. You've seen the evidence. The Centauri don't give you peace. They give you control. Your independence is worth fighting for. Rel looked down at the table, lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. The people of Kaltora are divided. Half of them believe in your vision of a free humanity. The other half. They fear the Centauri will return with a vengeance. We'll fight with you, Dara added, stepping forward. We'll ensure the Centauri don't have the strength to return. Together, we can drive them out. The governor stood up slowly, his eyes narrowing. Then we'll stand with you. But this is only the beginning. If you're ready to fight for the future of humanity, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. Chapter 18, The Battle for Kaltora. The decision was made. The forces loyal to Kaltora's new alliance with the Produce and the other independent colonies mobilized. The Centauri-aligned forces, caught off guard, were not prepared for the level of resistance they faced. The battle raged across the surface of Kaltora. The Produce's fleet fought valiantly, supported by newly allied forces from the surrounding systems. On the ground, human soldiers fought alongside the crew of the Produce, pushing back against the Centauri-controlled forces. The turning point came when a small squad, led by Elise herself, infiltrated a key Centauri command post hidden beneath the desert sands. They disabled a crucial communications relay, cutting off the enemy's coordination and crippling their ability to respond effectively. With their forces scattered and their leadership compromised, the Centauri-aligned factions fell into disarray, and Kaltora was won. Chapter 19, A New Era. The victory on Kaltora was just the beginning. The human colonies, inspired by the courage and resilience of the Produce crew, rallied together to form a new coalition, one that would no longer bow to the Centauri or anyone else who sought to control them. But Elise knew that the fight was not over. The Centauri would return. The galaxy was vast, and they were not the only ones who believed in the idea of controlling others. There would always be those who sought power. However, for the first time in human history, humanity was not just a pawn in someone else's game. There were players on their own board. As the Perseus prepared for its next mission, Commander Walker stood at the helm, looking out into the stars. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but it would be theirs to navigate. Humanity had found its strength. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would they. Chapter 20, The Long Shadow. The battle for Kaltora had been won, but the victory felt bittersweet. Commander Elise Walker stood on the observation deck of the Perseus, staring out at the expanse of space, her thoughts distant. The Centauri-aligned factions had been pushed back, but the galaxy was far from stable. Humanity had taken its first steps toward autonomy, but now the true cost of that independence was becoming clear. "We've done something no one thought possible," Lieutenant Dara said, joining her on the deck. "We've united the colonies, formed a new coalition. Kaltora's victory has inspired countless others." Elise nodded, but the unease she felt didn't dissipate. "Yes, but it hasn't solved everything. The Centauri might be reeling from our rebellion, but their reach extends far beyond what we've seen. There are still many who believe in their vision of peace, those who see the Centauri as protectors, not conquerors." Dara crossed her arms, a thoughtful expression on her face. "We can't just fight the Centauri on the battlefield. We need to change minds. The galaxy needs to understand why we fought, why freedom is worth fighting for. And we need to make sure the Centauri don't find new allies," Elise said, her voice firm. "If they do, they'll come after us again. This time, we need to be ready." Chapter 21, Seeds of Rebellion. The new human coalition, known as the United Systems Alliance, USA, began to take shape in the months following the victory on Kaltora. The colony worlds that had once been under the thumb of the Centauri or their influence had slowly rallied together. The promise of freedom resonated deeply within the people. Yet, despite their victories, there were factions that hesitated. Colonies that feared what would come next. The Centauri had left a long legacy of control, and breaking free of that influence wasn't going to be easy. Elise, as the face of the revolution, traveled to different systems, meeting with leaders, speaking to the people. The Perseus became a symbol of hope, but also a constant reminder of the difficult choices that lay ahead. The alliance was fragile, and though it had grown in size, it was still vulnerable. At a summit on the planet Ryath, Elise met with other leaders of the new alliance. Governor Amon Rel, now a strong ally after Kaltora's victory, had taken a prominent role in forging the coalition. He greeted her warmly as she stepped into the Grand Conference Hall, but the weight of their task was clear in his eyes. "Commander, we have reports of unrest in the core worlds," Rel said gravely, his face drawn tight with concern. "There are still factions that openly support the Centauri. And some of our own have begun to question whether we made the right choice." Elise sighed, rubbing her temples. "The fear of the unknown is powerful. The Centauri offered stability, even if that stability was built on control. But we can't go back. We can't allow that to happen." "But how do we convince the rest of the galaxy?" Rel asked. "We have no way of knowing how far their influence really reaches. They may already be planning a counterattack, building new alliances we can't see." "We start by exposing everything," Elise replied. "We need to make sure every colony knows the truth about the Centauri's manipulation. We have to make sure that no one can doubt why we fought for our freedom." As they spoke, a young diplomat named Celine Afton, who had recently joined the USA, entered the room. She had been in the midst of diplomatic talks with some of the more cautious colonies, those that weren't sure whether to align with the new alliance or remain neutral. "Commander, Governor," Celine greeted them, her expression tense. "I've just returned from a meeting with the Eastern Rim Alliance. They're not convinced. They want more security assurances before they commit to the USA. Some of them even suspect the Centauri might offer a better peace if we return to the fold." Elise felt her stomach churn. She knew this would happen. The scars of the past would take longer to heal than they anticipated. We can't give them a choice. If they side with the Centauri, they will never be free. We can't let that happen. Chapter 22: The Web of Influence. As the United Systems Alliance struggled to maintain its unity, the Produce crew uncovered something troubling: an underground network of Centauri sympathizers. These individuals, once part of the Centauri influence on human colonies, had begun to regroup, using encrypted communications and covert tactics to undermine the Alliance. These aren't just fringe groups, Dara said, looking over a series of intercepted communications. They're organized, and they have resources. If we don't stop them, they'll sow distrust and division among the colonies. Elise studied the data. We need to act fast. If the Centauri have been planting seeds of rebellion on human soil, it's only a matter of time before they move to take back what they lost. The Produce was dispatched to track down and disrupt these cells, but as they ventured deeper into the heart of Centauri influence, they uncovered a far more dangerous threat. The Centauri had begun experiments on humanity again, this time more covertly. These experiments weren't just about genetic modification, they were about control. And they were reaching deeper into the human psyche. Dr. Kerrigan, who had been researching the data on the Centauri's manipulations, uncovered a series of classified files. The Centauri aren't just trying to create a new peacekeeping force, she explained, her voice low with concern. They've been developing ways to override human free will. Mind control. Psychological programming. They've been embedding agents in our society, people who believe they're working for the greater good, but they're actually working for the Centauri. Elise stared at the data in shock. They've been turning humans into their own agents? We've got to shut this down. This is bigger than we thought. Chapter 23: The Shadow War. The Produce set course for the heart of the core worlds, where the Centauri sympathizers had been most active. The deeper they went into these systems, the more dangerous the environment became. The Centauri had planned for the eventuality of rebellion, and they had prepared accordingly, embedding their influence in the most strategic places: government, military, commerce, and even within the ranks of the USA itself. Elise and her team made their way to a hidden Centauri facility on the planet Adrax, believed to be the source of the mind control experiments. They had to stop whatever was happening there, or the cost of victory would become a permanent, insidious loss of humanity's autonomy. The facility was hidden beneath the surface, surrounded by miles of dense, toxic jungle. As they infiltrated the compound, it became clear that the Centauri had gone further than anyone had imagined. They had developed neural networks capable of manipulating thoughts, subtly altering perceptions, and reprogramming loyalties. We need to destroy everything, Elise said, her voice cold. We cannot let them turn our people into puppets. This is the final fight. Chapter 24: The Tipping Point. The final assault was brutal. The team fought their way into the heart of the facility, confronting not only Centauri forces but also human agents who had been turned into unwilling tools for their manipulation. As they reached the central core, Elise and Dara discovered a horrifying truth: the Centauri had been experimenting with a virus, one that could rewrite human memories and reshape their will, making them compliant to Centauri commands. A weapon of control more terrifying than any physical weapon. We need to shut it down, now, Dara said, urgency in her voice. Elise nodded. This ends here. The virus was destroyed, the facility dismantled. But as the Produce crew returned to the ship, Elise knew the war was far from over. They had struck a heavy blow against the Centauri, but they had also learned the depths of their enemy's reach. The Centauri would not give up their pursuit of control easily. And as humanity's revolution gained strength, the galaxy watched, knowing that the balance of power had shifted, but whether the new order would stand was yet to be seen. Chapter 25: A New Dawn. The Produce made its way back to the heart of the United Systems Alliance. The victory on Adrax was a significant one, but it was only one battle in a much larger war. The Centauri's influence had been exposed, their plans for control thwarted for now. Elise stood at the command console, watching the stars outside. The future of humanity was uncertain, but for the first time, it was in their hands. They would shape it together as free beings. The Centauri might have fallen back, but at least knew this was just the beginning of a new era. And humanity would be ready for whatever came next. Chapter 26, The Final Reckoning. The Proteus sailed through hyperspace, its crew tense but resolute. The events of the past months had taken their toll, but humanity had come a long way since their first victory against the Centauri. The United Systems Alliance had grown stronger, its influence expanding across more systems, while the shadow of the Centauri continued to loom, even if their hold had weakened. Elise Walker stood alone in the command center, her hands resting on the console. She had witnessed the birth of something new, something humanity had fought for, sacrificed for, and almost lost. But the Centauri were not defeated. The Alliance was still vulnerable, and every victory had been hard-won. "Commander," Lieutenant Dara's voice crackled over the comm, breaking the silence. "We're nearing the coordinates. It's time." Elise's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what they had to do. The Centauri had one last stronghold, an ancient facility hidden deep within the heart of their empire. If they could destroy it, they could effectively end the Centauri's influence over humanity once and for all. The Proteus and the fleet of allied ships gathered in the cold, dark expanse of space, preparing for their final strike. The Centauri had learned from their previous losses, but so had humanity. They had spent months preparing for this day, gathering intelligence, coordinating with allies, and ensuring that every piece was in place. This would be their final reckoning. Chapter 27, The Core of Control. The mission was set, and the Proteus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Centauri-controlled space. They had arrived at the facility, an imposing fortress, hidden on a desolate planet that had long been abandoned by most life. The Centauri's deep space technology had allowed them to hide it from prying eyes, but no longer. "We have one chance at this," Walker said, standing before the council of leaders gathered in the war room of the Proteus. "If we fail, the Centauri will regroup and retaliate, and we may not survive that second blow." Rel, now a trusted leader within the USA, nodded in agreement. "This facility houses the Centauri's central control hub, their last stronghold. If we destroy it, we cut off their communication, their coordination, their ability to influence humanity." "And the mind control virus?" Dara asked. "We destroy their facility," Elise said firmly. "We destroy their ability to reprogram humanity. This is the end." With a collective breath, the crew and their allies set their course. They had breached the Centauri stronghold before, but this would be different. This time, they would not simply disrupt operations, they would sever the heart of the Centauri's influence in one decisive blow. Chapter 28, Into the Heart of Darkness. The Proteus and its fleet of ships descended onto the barren planet, landing on the surface amidst a violent storm. The air was thick with static, and the ground cracked beneath their feet as they moved toward the heart of the Centauri facility. The towering spires of the fortress loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, as if warning them to turn back. Elise and her team, accompanied by an elite force of human soldiers, made their way into the fortress through an underground tunnel system. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the environment became, cold, sterile, and silent. It was a place built for control, for keeping secrets, for subjugating minds. They reached the central chamber, the heart of the facility, where rows upon rows of dormant machines sat, their functions hidden from view. In the center stood a massive console, one that pulsed with an eerie blue light. "This is it," Dara said, looking at the control panel. "The core of their network." Elise stepped forward, her hand resting on the cold surface of the console. "We shut this down. We destroy everything." The team worked quickly, planting explosives and disabling the security systems. As they prepared to leave, Elise's comm device buzzed with an urgent message. "Commander Walker," a voice crackled through the line, "the Centauri fleet has arrived. They're launching a counterattack. We need to leave now." "We won't leave without finishing this," Elise said, her voice unwavering. "Set the timer. We're not running anymore." Chapter 29, The Last Stand. As the countdown timer began, the produce crew sprinted back through the tunnels. The entire facility seemed to tremble as if it knew its end was near. The ground beneath them shook violently as they made their way toward the surface. But then, from the shadows of the storm, the Centauri fleet appeared vast and formidable, their ships bearing down on them with lethal intent. "We've got incoming," Dara shouted as she and the others ran toward the ships. Elise's heart raced as she knew this would be their final test. The battle had begun in earnest. The Produce launched its fighters and warships into the chaos of the space battle. The Centauri ships were powerful, but the Alliance had learned their tactics over the years. With every shot fired, humanity's forces pushed back against the overwhelming odds. "Elise, we need to move now," Dara called. The team reached their ship just as the timer hit its final moments. The explosion erupted behind them with a blinding flash, sending shockwaves through the entire Centauri facility. The fortress crumbled, its once imposing structures now reduced to rubble. The Centauri's control was severed. But even as the explosion rocked the facility, the Centauri fleet fought on, unwilling to give up without a final strike. The Produce and its allies fought bravely, but the Centauri were relentless. The final moments of the battle were a blur of flashing lights and gunfire, the stars themselves flickering as the two forces collided. And then, with one last massive explosion, the Centauri flagship, the symbol of their power, was destroyed in a brilliant burst of light. The fleet that remained scattered, defeated, their morale shattered. The United Systems Alliance had won, not just a battle, but the war for humanity's future. Chapter 30, A New Beginning. In the aftermath of the final battle, the Produce and its allies stood victorious. The Centauri had been dealt a decisive blow, their influence fractured beyond repair. The galaxy now belonged to humanity. The United Systems Alliance emerged from the ashes of war stronger than ever. The colonies that had once been divided, unsure of their future, now stood united, free from the shadow of the Centauri. Elise stood on the bridge of the Produce, gazing out at the stars, her heart heavy but hopeful. The road ahead was long, and there would always be new challenges, new struggles. But for the first time, humanity was no longer bound by the whims of others. They were free. As Commander Walker looked at the crew around her, she knew that they had accomplished something that would shape the future for generations to come. No longer just survivors, but builders, explorers, and guardians of their own destiny. Humanity had fought for its freedom, and it would never again be controlled. The stars were theirs to conquer.